Okay, perfect. Today, during discussion time with Eric, I wanted to talk about two concepts, um, virtue and authenticity. These two concepts come from ancient Greece. Uh, um, and they have a lot to do with each other. So, I was taught that the definition of virtue was to kind of not be extreme, but kind of have be logical, um, clear thinking, um, and avoid extremes. I guess not really take the middle ground, but think through things and don't be like super boring and waste your life. But on the other hand, don't do too much skydiving and stuff like that. Too extremes. Just kind of like be in the middle. And that definition of virtue, uh, that was made up by philosophers, the philosophers of the time. And I think that that definition of virtue is actually a personality trait that one is born with. I think that some people are born with that personality trait of that definition of virtue, and other people are born with the opposite of that. They're more extreme in some way. Um, Also, there's probably a lot of different ways you could view that definition, but the correct way to view that definition is to understand the actual personalities of people, the people who made up that definition. Philosophers, the personality of philosophers. I think that philosophers go down that path because they have a natural inclination to, and it pushes them down that path. And so uh, basically, um, these philosophers, they thought that they had the best personality, I guess, and they said that their way of thinking and their personality was virtuous, the best way to go. And so that's what I believe. Um, but that's not like really, dumb sociology idealistic point of view. That's just based on my knowledge of all of the variables that affect psychology. Freaking flies. um, so basically, people who are philosophers or people who are philosophically minded, people who have the natural inclination to think deeply about things and like logically, but in like a philosophical sense. Those people tend to think that that personality is really good and that other people, all people, should be like that. Um, and and that's just a fact of life. But it's not bad because literally everyone has their own thing. Literally everyone has their own thing like that, where they have a certain personality trait and they believe that everyone should think like that. Each personality thinks that their personality is the best, in a way. And so it's like INTJs, for example. I could just go through the list. INTJs, for example, first of all, they're dominant intuitives. So at some certain point in their life, maybe their childhood, they looked around and they realized, wow, I'm smarter than everyone else. And they realized that they could absorb a lot of information and regurgitate it, and they could come up with an analysis quickly based off of their vast library of information. Not even a library; it's just like a stream of. That's how they have described it to me. And so INTJs tend to basically look down on everyone else because they're not able to do that. Like, oh, I'm smarter because I have a wealth of knowledge. I could fire off trivia one by one, and other people can't. So I'm smarter. Like that Leonard Susskind guy, I remember listening to a lecture by him, and he was teaching some high-level students about the holographic principle, and he was using analogies and drawing stick figures on the board, and everyone is following along just fine. And then all of a sudden he says something like, "Oh, well, you can't really envision like a sphere unless you can regurgitate the formula for the area of a sphere or something, like or your high level calculus. You can't imagine it." I'm like, yeah, I can. Yeah, I can, dude. Just draw another stick figure. So he seems like an INTJ because he said that. There's like he thinks that like other people, but he doesn't have a background in psychology. He's a math guy, so he wouldn't understand how other people think. I could just go down the list. Like, for example, ENTJs, the politician types. They're called politician types for a reason. They meticulously and logically put aside their own personality, if they have any, and wear a mask to fit the situation so that other people like them. And I know for a fact that they think that they're smarter than everyone else because they don't know anyone who has that specific ability. They think that other people should be that smart. Or ESTJs, they wonder why everyone doesn't support the status quo, whatever it is. They wonder why people don't just focus on gaining more status in life. I know some ESTJs, and I have seen in real time ESTJs change what they believe simply because the status quo changed. They just followed the status quo, and they think that they're better in that regard. It's kind of like a personal challenge for them, as opposed to like an intuitive who just automatically assumes that they're smarter. It's not about other people being dumber. It's about them fulfilling a personal goal. Same with other STs. Um, what's that jock type? The jock type, the ST, it was an ESTP. ESTP, the jock type, they tend to be good at sports, and they wonder why, hey, why aren't people good at sports like me? People should be more active and go out hiking and stuff more. ESTPs, or ISTPs actually, that's one of the philosopher types. It's more like a Buddha type, where they go out in the woods and their philosophies are based more around like, this is a good way to live, go out in nature and stuff. And why can't people go out in nature more and like be one with nature? And they go camping a lot. So in that regard, they think that everyone should act like that, and they're therefore better than everyone else. SFs, all the SFs, they go partying a lot, and they think that, oh man, people who don't party, they're like missing out. Like they're like really boring, and they're just wasting away. Why can't they go out and live? That's how they think. The SFs. Then the NFs, a lot of times they're like, oh man, these people are not very caring. They should be a lot more caring. And each personality has their own thing. And the INTPs, like me, the dominant trait is introverted thinking, and followed by extroverted intuition. And INTPs tend to think that, see virtue as, clear, logical thinking, studying things, and that everyone should do that. And a lot of INTPs would say that, well, the reason society is all messed up is because people they don't they don't think philosophically and study books and stuff. So that definition, I am convinced, was made up by an INTP, simply stating what their personal personality was. So I could sit here and swirl my wine. It's not wine. And say, oh yes, I'm so much better because I'm like a philosopher. Well, actually, everyone has their own role in society, and it's good to know your place in society. Focusing on that is good if you're like, for example, I started out, I was going to be a firefighter, and I jumped through a bunch of hoops to go down that path in life. And after years and years of being in that environment, it slowly dawned on me that I didn't fit in. And yeah, there's a lot of people who just do a job because it's a job and they don't fit in. But those people are not going to be as successful or efficient, because they're not going to be passionate at that, and they don't fit in. They're not going to be they're not going to have a good life. So everyone has their own place, and maybe it's the job of the INTPs to think big picture for everyone else, um, and strategize um, for everyone else, because other people don't, just because of their personality, it's how they were born. They're not ever going to think big picture for themselves or anyone else. They're not going to be a strategist, and that's not a big deal. That's who they are. They can do whatever they want, and that part is not going to change. Personalities do not are not going to change. If the world improves and becomes a utopia, everyone's going to have the same. The personalities are going to be exactly the same as they used to be. That's not it. It's not. That's not the cure. Uh, the change in personality. That's not going to happen. So the other concept I wanted to talk about was authenticity, and that comes from the story of Socrates, where Socrates, he was kind of an annoying guy because he kept asking questions and making people think. And they gave him a choice of leaving or dying, and he chose to kill himself. And the reason was that he wanted to stay authentic. So that meaning of the word authentic is simply this: the status quo or the authority or the establishment wants you to be a certain way that goes against your natural inclinations. And to be authentic is to stay true to your natural inclinations despite the pushback. And that's how people usually use the term authentic. However, authentic is something that you do despite outside forces. And I've started to see personality as kind of an outside force, even though it's an internal force. But the thing about personality is that people like say don't put me in a box. I'm so unique. You can't put me in a box. Yeah, everyone is unique. But you can put people into boxes. There's people who are fine with being put into boxes, and there's people who are not fine with being put into boxes. There, which box do you go into? You could come up with boxes all day. I'm really good at putting people into boxes. A lot of people think that you can't put people into boxes. That's totally wrong. And if you speak in generalizations, people always want to say, "Oh, don't say that about all people." Oh, come on. You know what they're saying. If I generalize, you know what I'm talking about. Like you know what I'm talking about. Well, anyway, personality being an outside force, it's like, I want to stay true to my personality, my natural inclination. But also, if you think about it, wanting to stay true to your natural inclination is kind of dependent upon your natural inclination. I don't know how to put this. It's like real authenticity doesn't really exist because of personality and boxes. You really can be put into boxes, and people tend to go down a certain path in life because of their natural inclinations. It's not like they chose to have that. It's not like it's something that's influencing their psychology. Um, so, all right. Well, I think that's all I wanted to say for now.